Hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We can already see lots of comments here. Thank you for joining. My name is Florence Akpan, founder and lead consultant here at InfoPlace Canada. And I have with me Yulia and Esther, our team of consultants who will be talking about express entry today and common errors that you can avoid in your journey to becoming Canadian permanent residents. So before we get started, we'd like to do a little bit of introduction for those of you who don't already know us. And I'm just going to start with Yulia. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Super excited to see your questions, your comments, and overall, I hope you enjoy this presentation or webinar. My name is Yulia. I'm a licensed immigration consultant. I am very passionate about helping people come to Canada, achieve their dreams, because I truly believe it's a dream. It was one for me. I am also I'm a foreigner. I wasn't born in Canada. I came here in 2012 as an international student. I then got my PGWP, worked for a company for 1 year, got into the express entry. So I did CEC, so I can relate to a lot of the clients who are going through the same thing. Why I love InfoPlace Canada, I love the relationship that we are able to build with our clients and the way we handle every single application start to finish. I feel like we add a lot of value, and at the end of it all, we almost like build friendships, and the team is amazing. So thank you so much for listening to my introduction. I will pass the torch over to Esther now.
Esther, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Yulia, for sharing that. So my name is Esther. I'm also a regulated Canadian immigration consultant here at InfoPlace Canada. Like Yulia, I also came to Canada from a different country. The thing is, I came as a dependent on my parents' application. They came through the Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program. So had a little bit of exposure there. I'm also very, very passionate about working with immigration, working with people from different countries. That's actually the reason why I entered this field, because I just loved meeting people from different countries, getting to know their cultures is just so fascinating, and making those friendships. So thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Esther. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Florence Akpan. I'm the founder and lead consultant here at InfoPlace Canada, working behind the scenes to help immigrants not just dream of coming to Canada, but achieve their goals of coming to Canada. So thank you so much for joining. And we will be getting started here with our presentation today. And of course, it's express entry. And I always like to set the tone of what we are going to be going through and looking at. What we're doing here today is we're going to be talking about the various things that you can avoid if you're looking to apply to become a permanent resident through express entry. A lot of times, the express entry started in 2015 and it had become very popular. Back in 2015, when it started, there would have been like maybe 40,000 people in the pool at one time, 70,000. But today we have over 200,000 people at any given time in the express entry pool. So the competition to become permanent residents is getting stiffer and stiffer. And to walk you back a little bit, it was like in 2017, it was like just get high scores, just get a master's degree, have high language scores. Your scores are going to be high enough for you to receive an invitation. But the landscape of things have changed so much, especially this year, with the introduction of category-based draws. So for applicants who are able to comfortably receive invitations to apply for permanent residence and things like that, it's not something you want to play with, because it is golden. As I always say, receiving an ITA to apply for PR is golden. And in this presentation today, and what we'll be talking to you about is common errors and things that we see that for people who receive this golden invitation, sometimes end up losing it and not even having the opportunity to become permanent residents. And a lot of them are tied to really small errors and things that happen through the application process. Now, if you're thinking about it, you've received an ITA, or you are just in the pool waiting to see if you can receive an ITA, you're definitely going to be benefiting from the things that we're going to be discussing today. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to start with just an overview of eligibility requirements in case there's anybody here who doesn't even know what that is, and then we're going to get into those common errors. Okay. All right, so we're going to get started. Yulia, let's talk about federal skilled worker. Just an overview of federal skilled worker. Who is typically eligible for the federal skilled worker program?
Alrighty, thank you so much. So federal skilled worker, in order to meet the criteria under this specific pathway, you have to have at least 1 year of continuous work experience. And guess what? That work experience has to be skilled. So what does that mean? Your work experience that you have gained must meet one of the tier categories, being 0, 1, 2, or 3. If you happen to fall out of those tier categories, you have to review your eligibility, because everything past category 3, be it category 4, 5, or 6, is not skilled. Does that mean there's no chances for you? No, absolutely not. We're just reviewing this specific pathway. So here we go. 1 year of continuous work experience within the last 10 years. It has to be skilled. In addition to that, it's really, really important that you meet the language ability requirements. So that is a level 7, CLB level 7. As a skilled worker in Canada, Canada wants you to be able to, communicate properly at a high level. So oftentimes we see that clients are able to attain that, be it having taken the language test once or maybe retaking it the second time, but CLB level 7 for this category is necessary. Education. Education is the next one. You have to have had either completed your education in Canada, or if you've completed your education back home, you have to have an ECA, Education Credential Assessment. So what is that? That, in a nutshell, to tell Canada that your bachelor or your master's at home is equivalent to a bachelor's degree or a master's degree in Canada. Age. So to be very specific, to claim the maximum amount of points under this category, federal skilled worker, you will be able to do that if you are between ages 18 and 35. You'll get your maximum amount of points. After the age of 35, with every year, your points start to decline for age. And once you hit 47, you will be awarded 0 points for age. Okay? And overall, right now, the FSW, Federal Skilled Worker, current pass mark is 67 points. You absolutely have to hit those 67 points, or else we have to talk about maybe a different pathway for you.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Esther. So with the federal skilled worker, I just want to clarify what Yulia has just finished talking about is the eligibility requirement to even submit an express entry profile. This is not your CRS point, because the 67 is what you need to meet first before you even go in to calculate your comprehensive ranking score, which is what the minister would draw on and invite on to apply for PR. Qualifying is the first thing that we're talking about now. Okay, thank you. Esther, let's talk about federal skill trade. What is this particular program all about?
Okay, so in order to be eligible for the Federal Skilled Trades Program, you must have at least 2 years of full-time work experience in a skilled trade within the last 5 years before you apply. You must also meet job requirements for skilled trades NOC groups and have a valid job offer for a period of at least 1 year, or a certificate of qualification issued to you by a Canadian authority. Now, for the valid job offer part, we are going to go into detail later on today in our presentation. So more about that coming up. And as for the minimum language requirements, you'll need to have a CLB 5 for speaking and listening and a CLB 4 for reading and writing. For federal skilled trades, there's no education requirement, but we really do recommend getting an ECA report, so an educational credential assessment, as this would increase your CRS points. All right. Now I'll have Yulia talk about Canadian Experience class.
Alrighty, thank you so much. So for the Canadian Experience class, you have to have 1 year, at least 1 year of skilled work experience in Canada in the 3 years before you apply. It may not even be continuous, as long as you were able to generate 1 year of skilled work experience in Canada 3 years before you apply. You already know what we mean when we say skilled work experience. That means you have to meet that NOC code tier requirement, have it within tier categories 0, 1, 2, or 3. Very important here that your experience that you're claiming must be gained while you were authorized to work in Canada. So you have to be in Canada legally, with a legal status, with a legal authorization to work. So when it comes to language skills, they're a little bit lower. So for example, if you are going under a tier category 2 or 3, you only need to meet CLB level 5. However, if you have a higher position, a higher job role, and you are within a tier category 0 or 1, you still have to show CLB level 7, or let's not forget about French, NCLC 7. So tier category 2 or 3, NCLC 5, or if you are tier category 0, 1, for French, it is NCLC 7 as well. Your education credentials, very similar to FSW, they have to be obtained in Canada, or again, you must present your education credential assessment. Alrighty, and that's just a very quick overview of all 3 different categories that we will be talking about today. I will pass it on to Florence to briefly summarize the year for us and what we've seen with Express Entry and Permanent Residency.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Esther and Yulia, on those highlighting those requirements and things like that. Now, the next thing that we want to get into, of course, is the common errors that I talked about at the beginning. Before we start, this month alone, IRCC has invited over 15,000 people to apply for permanent residence this month alone. Over 15,000 people have received ITAs. And a lot of times when it's one thing to meet all of those requirements that Yulia and Esther have talked about, but the biggest challenge is getting that invitation. And the landscape has changed. With the introduction of the category-based draws, we can see that in this month alone, IRCC actually there was only one general draw. And with the general draw, the cutoff was 560. So with a cutoff of 560, most applicants outside the country, without a job offer, without a Canadian education and things like that, literally may not even qualify for that. Applicants that may score up to that 560, even being in Canada, would be applicants that maybe speak French, have valid job offer, have worked in Canada, and things like that to actually meet that general draw cutoff. So with the score being really high at 560, a lot of applicants are wondering, basically, what are my options? That my chances are slim. The next thing is the category-based draws. They are now about 6 categories that IRCC has identified as their area of focus, because what Canada is doing now is not just inviting people generally, which has been happening prior to this year. As long as you meet a certain cutoff, you receive an ITA, but they're moving away from that and looking to invite applicants who actually meet and would fill the labor needs in Canada. So the area of focus is agriculture and agri-food. There are specific NOC codes for that. Transportation, trades, occupation. We just talked about trades. STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. French. So if you speak French, you probably have a really high chance of actually receiving an ITA to come to Canada and things like that. And of course, the health occupation as well. And we've actually seen all of these categories receiving invitations. I think it's just health that has not received invitation this month, but all through this year, these different people have received this invitation. So now if you're in any of these categories and you're looking at your NOC code and things like that, and you're not sure, your scores are not high, you definitely want to maximize it. But what we see and what we've noticed this year is when it's not a general draw, the scores are lower. The general draw was sitting at 560, but today that they had like the aggregate draw, guess what the cutoff was? 386. So literally, if you're outside the country and you meet those specific, you have experience in the NOC codes that are being invited under agriculture, 400 people were invited, you could potentially receive that invitation to apply for PR. Basically, what I'm saying is the landscape has changed, and the fact that IRCC is focusing on these particular categories right now does not mean that in 2024 that would be the focus, or in 2025. Despite the fact that they still plan to bring in a lot of immigrants into the country, things could be shifting. It is shifting, it is changing, and the more reason for you to be better prepared when you are going through, when you're looking at your options and exploring it to see what is the best fit for you and what you can do to optimize your points and really position yourself in a situation where you can receive an invitation. Okay, so one of the things, I think I just saw a question there, just a little bit of housekeeping here. If you have any questions, you could hold it to the end because we're going to have a section for questions. But what we're going to do now, because these ITAs, like I said, have become really golden, we want to talk about common errors that we have seen clients make. People come to us, have been refused a visa, PR, or even returned applications that have impacted them. If your application is returned, you can't just say, oh, they returned it because I missed one document, let me send it back. No, you're going to have to start again and get back in the pool. And you don't know if you're going to receive that invitation. So very, very important to listen very closely to this error so that you can ensure that you're planning well for that opportunity that you get. And if you receive an ITA, you are not making these mistakes when you're submitting your application. So we're going to get started here with Esther. We're going to talk about the first common error here, which is incorrectly claiming points. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Florence. So this is actually a very, very common error. So many individuals make this error. So just kindly listen closely. So I'm not just talking about simply making a mistake when you're creating your express entry profile or even filling out your PR application. So these are claims which may be true, you cannot substantiate or provide evidence for. And if this is the case, your score would decrease and you may no longer be eligible for the program that you're applying under, depending on what the CRS cutoff score was in the round of invitations. So what are some examples? Work experience. Maybe you've claimed 3 years of work experience, but you really can only provide proof of 1 year. You have no documentation whatsoever for the other year or two. Another example would be family members in Canada. So maybe you've claimed that you have family members in Canada, but your family members are unwilling to provide you with the necessary documents to prove their relationship to you and their status in Canada. Another example would be wrong points for language scores or your educational credentials. So this would be making a typo when you're creating your profile, or even entering incorrect information, just false information. Then valid job offer. So this is one that I've seen so many individuals make this mistake. They assume a valid job offer is just a regular job offer. It is not. So you cannot claim points for arranged employment if you just have a regular job offer. A job offer, a valid job offer, is valid if the job is continuous, if it's paid full-time for at least 1 year after your PR visa is issued in a NOC tier category, if this is FSW, or skilled trade occupation if FST, and it must be supported by an LMIA, or in some cases, if you have a valid LMIA exempt work permit, so that means it's exempt from needing an LMIA, it would be eligible. So you may be exempt if your job is covered by an international agreement, or exempt for Canadian interest reasons, or covered by a federal provincial agreement. So in other words, having a postgraduate work permit or an open work permit and having a regular job offer or even an LMIA exempt offer would not qualify because you don't have a valid LMIA exempt work permit. So just something to note. And to summarize, there is no point in claiming what you cannot prove in your PR application. This is just so important. So if you're unable to prove that you have family members in Canada, even though you do, or that work experience, there's just no point in claiming that when you're creating your profile or in your PR application. All right, I'm just going to hand off to Yulia here.
Perfect. Thank you, Esther. Very great. Yulia, over to you. Selecting wrong knock codes. This is, before Yulia talks about it, I'll just tell a little story. A couple of years ago, a client contacted me because she was refused PR twice. Her score was 490 something, but she was refused her PR twice. So it was the third time that she reached out to InfoPlace Canada to help her figure out what was going on, because she felt everything was fine, but the officer kept refusing her application because she selected the wrong knock code. And the difference and the challenge that she was having, the officer would just say she selected the wrong knock code, but they don't tell you what the correct thing should be, or what it should, what the right knock code should be. And when I looked at it, I realized that she was a store supervisor. However, her job title said she was a store. No, her job title said she was a store manager, but her job description was not aligned with what a store manager would do based on the Canadian National Occupation Classification. The job she was doing was more aligned with a supervisor and not a store manager. And this is why her application kept being refused, because she kept selecting the knock code that was matching her job title, but not her job duties. Over to you, Yulia. So talk about how this typically would be a problem and how people can avoid it.
Thank you so much for these examples. I think that's why people are here, is to hear these real life stories and things that we've seen in the past. I'm currently working with a client as well. We're just about to submit his PR, and he selected a knock code as a lab technician. After our review, he's a lab assistant. So it is easier said than done. That's why I really want to summarize and cover this section really well. And just talking about knock codes alone, this could be a webinar like on its own, and maybe Florence will do that in the new year. But just a brief little overview here. So in a nutshell, the IRCC uses National Occupation Classification System to group applicants based on the work you do and your job duties. Okay, so we've talked about different groupings. These are the tier categories. Now, when you look at them, like I said, skilled category is tier 0, 1, 2, or 3. So when you look at the tier category 0, these are your management occupations. Straightforward. If you're a manager, let's look at tier category 0. Let's look at your job duties and responsibilities. And let's look at your actual offer of employment letter. Let's analyze them. Tier category 1, occupations that usually require a university degree. So I just want you to wrap your head around that it's not just now the duties and responsibilities. This is your education. It typically requires a university degree. Does it always require a university degree? Based, again, what's in your job offer. But these are some of the things that you really have to analyze and compare. Tier category 2, these are the occupations that usually require a college diploma, or supervisory occupations, or some sort of apprenticeship training. Tier category 3, similar, college diploma, more than 6 months training on the job, or apprenticeship as well. So these are just broad summarizations, a summary of these tier categories. Feel free to ask questions if you have questions, particularly to knock codes to your categories. But let's talk about the actual errors and common mistakes and things that I would recommend you do when you're really selecting your knock code. Make sure that the knock code is in line with the lead statement, the job description, and education qualifications. So the lead statement is usually the very first paragraph on the knock code website. So something very broad and an easy one to analyze is administrative assistant. Right there, the very first paragraph tells you what duties an administrative assistants usually perform. After that, they go into the example of titles. So that brings me to your job title is not so important, because even last month, I had a client who was performing, who was an administrative assistant, her job title was completely different. And we had to compare and analyze via like Excel charts, what would her knock code actually be? So don't focus on your job title. What Florence said, the title was a manager, but this client was actually performing the duties of a supervisor. And lastly, not meeting the knock code requirements. So what do we mean by that? It's looking at your broad occupation category, comparing other knock codes. So don't just look at, this one knock code. Analyze similar knock codes that will really help you land on the correct one. Look at the major groups. Sometimes there are major groups in terms of transportation or logistics or finance or education. Those are some of the major groups we often see. Review your main duties. So I want to pause here and I really want to highlight that the main duties that you are performing right now, they don't have to be exact. They don't have to be 100%. They have to match what the knock code states by 60 to 70%. So if you review the main duties of the knock code line by line, and you highlight the ones that you actually do and perform, and the ones that are in your letter, and that matches by 60 to 70%, you're good. You're in the green. You can select this knock code, check the other requirements, employment requirements. Does that apply to you? Does your employer want you to must have 1 year of work experience in a similar occupation? And also check exclusions, because sometimes the IRCC will exclude certain titles, certain job titles. For example, administrative assistant has an exclusion to an executive assistant. That's a totally different knock code. So make sure that when you're on the knock codes website, you go through every single element that's there. As a tip for you today, we do have a fantastic blog post on our website that I will be dropping the link to right now. This is actually telling you the 6 steps you can do to choose the right knock code for your PR application. So without further ado, if there are questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Here's the link to our blog post. And Florence, if you have anything to add on top of that,
yeah,
I'm going to pass it over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Julia. The only thing I want to add there is a lot of times there have been people who, because we're talking about knock code, description matching the knock code and things like that, I have seen someone come to me whose application was refused because their company in another continent had exact job description to match what the Canadian website had for knock code description. What am I saying? Don't go copying the knock code description word for word, verbatim, and submitting that as your job description or your employment reference letter, because an officer is not going to buy that, because the lingo will be different, the terms will be different. You could use that as a guide to understand if you're choosing the right knock code. It should be aligned, but it should not be verbatim. It shouldn't be copied word for word, because they don't typically like that, because then they start thinking everything in your application is made up and not real to the job that you are doing. So something to be very careful about. Thank you so much, Julia, for that. Over to you, Esther. Number 3, what we have here is incomplete reference letter. So just following through with what we just said, let's talk about reference letters.
Okay, thank you, Florence and Yulia. So I want to talk about this mistake here. So an incomplete employment reference letter, you may also call it an employment record letter. This is actually different from your job offer letter, just because a job offer letter does not contain all of the important components that an immigration officer is going to be looking for. So what should you include in your employment reference letter? IRCC is looking for your job title, your duties, your salary, your start and end dates, and the duties must be aligned with the knock code that you've selected. Another tip would be have this on official company letterhead and include proof of payment. Now, this is just so important, because back then, when Express Entry first started, this wasn't as common. But what we're seeing today is many immigration officers are coming back and asking for proof of payment. So definitely include that. If you have those salary pay slips, include that. And just one thing for you to know is without proof of employment, there really is no point in claiming points. So like I've said before, if you don't have that proof, then don't claim it. You can include your employment in your personal history section, but if you don't, but if you have that proof, you can definitely include it in your work history section. All right. So I'm going to also talk about submitting incomplete applications. So this is also so very important because this could be anything from not submitting your police certificates. So perhaps you need to submit, more than one police certificate, submitting expired ECAs or language results. Another one would be submitting incorrect ECAs. So depending on your NOC, you may need a designated professional body to provide you with an ECA report, as opposed to getting one from a designated organization like World Education Services. So an example would be if your primary occupation is that of a family physician, you are actually required to get an ECA report from the Medical Council of Canada and not an organization like WES, because then your application could be returned as incomplete. Another example would be uploading a wrong document. So we've actually come across that one where the husband uploaded his wife's police clearance in his slot. So that would also be incomplete. So what happens when your application is incomplete? Basically, an officer would send it back to you as incomplete, and that means re-entering the pool and starting the entire process over again. So that is very unfortunate. So just make sure that your application is complete and you're providing all the required documents. I also want to talk about inconsistent information with previous applications. So you want to ensure that any information that you're providing is in line with the information that you've provided in previous applications, whether they were approved or they were refused. Any unexplained inconsistencies can lead to a refusal or even a 5-year ban due to misrep. This could be travel history that you forgot to disclose. It could be a higher educational credential that you are including in this PR application to gain points, which you did not disclose in previous applications. So this is actually a very, very common one. When people apply for the study permit, they don't disclose their master's, but then disclose it in PR applications. So very common. Another example would be work experience, which you claimed or did not claim in previous applications, and also family members that you did not disclose before. So one thing that I want you to know is everything must be consistent, but if there are any inconsistencies, you must actually include accurate information and explain the inconsistency. So we're not telling you just make sure that your PR application is consistent with previous. What we're telling you is just make sure you're providing accurate information, because again, you don't want IRCC to come back and give you a ban for misrepresentation. And then if you no longer have previous applications, so if you've lost them, maybe you've worked with an agent, request GCMS notes so you can look at your previous applications. And this is actually a service that we offer, and we could definitely assist you with this. All right. And I know Florence has a really, really good example here. Florence, if you could share your example.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Esther. So I actually have a couple of examples. This one client, she had contacted us for a review service, but we were completely booked and we didn't have availability to do it. So she went ahead and submitted her application. And then months later, she contacted us and said, I have a PFL. A PFL is a procedural fairness letter that comes from IRCC, where when you get a PFL, there is something wrong. You're on the verge of getting banned. Usually the outcome of a PFL is always either an approval, a refusal, or a 5-year ban. When a PFL comes, it means that there's something that an officer has seen in your application that they don't feel right about. They feel that you've been untruthful, you've misrepresented in one way or the other. And for this particular client, what happened was she had applied from the time that she started coming to Canada, like maybe 8 years prior to when she had applied for this particular visiting visa, particular PR. She had applied for a visiting visa. She had applied for a study permit. She had applied for a work permit, and then now the PR. Now, at this point, she now had, when the officer was looking at her application, the officer went back and looked at every single previous application that she's done. And the officer said, at this point, you told us you were working here to here. In this year, you said you were working in this company. there have been inconsistencies with your work experience, and then now this is the work experience you're using for your PR. What is going on? Explain it to us. So when she came to us, it was crazy. There was a lot of work that we needed to put in together to explain the discrepancy, which she didn't even know had occurred because she had used some assistance from other agents to help her with application. She didn't know it even existed. But walking through that, we're able to work with her, and she didn't get a ban or anything. She actually did get approved. But coming to me, of course, I'm like, these are huge discrepancies in your application. There is a chance here that you could be banned for misrepresentation. But thankfully, we were able to work with her and turn that around. So on that one, it was work experience. We had this other client as well who had used an unlicensed agent to complete his application to Canada. And I think one time I had a post on Instagram. Basically, we had posted something that said that IRCC keeps records. So ensure that you know the record IRCC has for you, and if not, request a GCMS note and things like that to understand what is on file. So if something is wrong, you can correct it, especially if you did not complete your application yourself. Now at InfoPlace Canada, we offer a very transparent service where every document and everything we submit for our client, the clients have access to it, including the representative letter that are included in the applications. But some people don't do it that way. So this particular client reached out and said, oh yeah, I used an agent to apply to come to Canada. I'd like to see my GCMS note just in case when I'm applying for PR, everything is fine. And so we requested it. And we actually have a blog on this particular client's story as well. And his jaw literally dropped when he saw the GCMS note. There were errors. His family members were not in the application. The person who was a sponsor on his study permit was not actually the person who we thought sponsored his application. So a lot of documents were doctored in his study permit application to come to Canada. But he was here because you know what, in as much as Canada has a fantastic system and all of that and is reviewing, things do slip through the cracks. But one thing with Canada, it could have slipped through the first time, the second time, the third time, just like with the first client I told you about, someone would eventually catch it. So when he contacted us and said he wanted us to assist, I said, we have to be honest. We have to fix this error. This is why what we just said is we at InfoPlace Canada don't push you and don't ask our client to be consistent with errors. If there are discrepancies with your previous application, what we want to do is come clean. We want to explain ourselves. We want to explain what happened, why the inconsistency happened, why the error happened, why information was left out, so that an officer can understand why and proceed on with the application and things like that. And this was what we did with this client. It was really difficult because a lot of people told him, no, you're going to get banned. You're going to get removed from Canada because that means you entered Canada on the wrong information and things like that. But we worked with this client to build sufficient proof to support his case and also make a good, honest case, again, with supporting documents for his PR application. And his application was approved. And one of the things he said was, you guys have set me free, because there's nothing as bad as living in a country on information that is not true, because you're constantly scared that even at citizenship, years down the line, it could come up and they could revoke your citizenship and everything that you've worked hard for. So we're always pro being very honest and very upfront in these applications as you're doing it. And those inconsistent information needs to be addressed properly in every application you're doing. Anything you miss, just come clean. IRCC loves you when you're upfront and honest, not when they have to be the ones coming back to ask you about that information. That's when a lot of people do get into trouble. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies. Let's go on to number 6, which is personal history. Yulia, over to you.
Thank you, Florence. Thank you, Esther. That was so great. Now let's talk about all of these other components that you spend a lot of time on during your permanent residency application, and you also want to make sure you get them right and you provide the most accurate information. So personal history. What is your personal history? This is everything you've done in the last 10 years. Be it, did you go to university within the last 10 years? Were you unemployed at some point of time? Or were you working and gaining your skilled work experience? So I'm not going to go anywhere further than myself. I'm going to use myself as an example. For my 10-year personal history, the work history and the skilled work that I was claiming was as a marketing coordinator. So I had a certain number of years as marketing coordinator. However, within the last 10 years, did I work as a sales associate? Yes, I did. Did I work as an administrative assistant? Yes, I did. Did I work as a receptionist? Yes, I did. All of that, I wasn't entering it under my work history because I didn't want to confuse the officer, because my primary skilled work experience was marketing coordinator. Everything else that I did was in my personal history. I also included my education that I've completed in Canada, and I also included some period of unemployment because, I wasn't very consistent with, things happen. So there were periods of time within the last years that I was unemployed, and so I've put everything in there. So this is when we talk about your personal history. You want to include a complete background of what you've done. Now, I want to also touch upon your travel history. So within the last 10 years, if you've also traveled to other countries or even lived in other countries, very important that you have your accurate days and that you do not miss any of these countries that you've visited. So the reason for that is Canada shares a Freedom of Information Act with most of the countries. It is very easy for them to, search your name and pull up your travel history, be it permanent residency, be it study permit. So they will check your travel history. That's why, again, we're emphasizing on the accuracy, emphasizing on not to miss things, and to include everything in your PR application as accurately as possible. Like, for example, leading into police certificates. So I've mentioned if you have lived in another country, and this is if you've lived there for 6 months or more, you must provide police certificates from that country as well as from your country of citizenship. And there is a caveat there. So a good example is if you've lived in the UK, for more than 6 months, and you've left the UK, this is when you request your police police certificate. You want to request it for the period that, making sure that after you left on good terms with the country. I feel like the question that I often get is, what about Canada? I've lived in Canada for more than 6 months. Do I need a police certificate from Canada? Absolutely not. You do not. You only need to provide police certificates from your home country, country of citizenship, and a country that you lived in that's other than Canada for more than 6 months.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia. Now we're going to talk about proof of funds. Insufficient proof of funds is also another common error that leads to issues with PR applications. Go ahead, Esther.
Okay, thank you, Florence and Yulia. So this table here that you have in front of you, it shows the minimum amount that you need as of this year, 2023. The amount of funds is based on your family size. So to calculate the size of your family, you'll want to include yourself, you'll want to include your spouse or your common law partner, your dependent children, and your spouses or your common law partner's dependent children. So you want to count all of the mentioned family members, even if they're Canadian citizens or permanent residents, and even if they're not coming with you to Canada. So this is so important. These funds should also be readily available when you apply and when you are issued a permanent resident visa. So what do I mean when I say readily available to you? So you can't use equity on real estate. You also can't borrow funds. So these funds must be yours and you should have easy access to them. You'll want to get official letters from your bank or financial institution, and you'll want to make sure the letters include the bank's contact information, all of your account numbers, date each account was opened, current balances, and 6-month statements. So what do you do if you don't have the funds? You can actually get a gift deed from a family member and have those funds be deposited into your account. Now, if you have any suspicious large deposits, you would explain those large deposits and provide proof. Now, here's the thing. So IRCC may ask for proof of funds again prior to a decision being made on your application. So what you want to do is make sure those funds are still there. This actually happens. It actually happens quite often. So ensure that the funds are there the entire time throughout the application process. Now, here's a tip. When you're submitting your application, check to see if IRCC updated the proof of funds requirements at the time of application submission. The funds are always updated once a year. So just make sure you have enough funds before you submit your application. Also, you would need to provide proof of funds if you're applying under FSW or if you're applying under FST. You don't need proof of funds if you're applying under Canadian Experience class. Now, if you're applying under FSW and you're authorized to work in Canada, or you're applying under FST and you're authorized to work in Canada and you have a valid job offer with an LMIA, then you don't need to provide proof of funds. Otherwise, if you don't meet that criteria, then you do. All right, I'll just hand this over to Yulia then.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. So let's talk about non-disclosure and previous refusals. Remember, IRCC will be checking your background very thoroughly. So if you have any previous immigration history with a refusal, with a refugee application, with a ban, you want to come forward. You want to make sure you include them in this application. We've talked about GCMS notes. Sometimes clients don't even know if they had a ban in the past. They thought maybe it was a simple refusal. Maybe it was, but it's always good to request GCMS notes if you had a hurdle in the past with immigration. This is not only just for Canada. This includes any other country in the world. If you were refused a US visa, Germany, what have you, make sure you mention them. Because non-disclosure could very well lead to a refusal or even a ban for a misrepresentation. And let me tell you, it's very hard to come out of a ban. And if you've been banned to Canada, that may not look so favorable on your application to other countries too. So just very, very important to include all of those previous refusals, not just to Canada, but to other countries. Additionally, what about your family members? You have to include their previous refusals or bans as well, even if your family member is a non-accompanying family member, if they're not coming with you, or if they are coming with you, you have to disclose that. Sometimes, when we see a husband and a wife apply together, husband may not be aware of, a visa refusal that the wife had to United States 10 years ago. So it's very important to have those conversations between yourselves and to think about your accompanying and non-accompanying family members, in addition to you, the primary applicant. Thank you for that.
Perfect. Thank you, Yulia. I'd like to add there was someone who contacted us as well once, and he had actually received an ITA, packaged a strong application. He submitted his application, and he got a letter from IRCC stating, "Why are you applying? Your 5-year ban is not done." And this client did not know that he had a 5-year ban. So for a lot of people who use unlicensed representative for their applications, you might have just gotten a message from your rep saying, the application was not successful, it was refused. And maybe you're upset, you're not happy about the outcome of the decision, and you don't bother to say, can I see the refusal letter? Can I see the document that IRCC sent? If you've ever had a refusal and you've not seen what the letter said, you might be in trouble. It's better off for you to have that refusal letter so that you know exactly if there was a ban or no ban or whatever, what the reason for the refusal was. And also right now, we're also seeing IRCC going after the number of times you disclose. So maybe if you were refused Canadian visa once, twice, 3 times, and you said only once, and it was 3 times, they could still refuse your application because of that. So it's in the detail, it's in the accuracy. If you don't have all this information and you've ever applied, you want to actually get a GCMS note that you can get for Canada, and it's for all the family members, adult applicants as well. And if it's for the other countries, ensure you disclose it. Ensure you disclose your reasons for refusal, not just for Canada, but for any other country that you may have applied to visa for, so that you don't get in trouble. Yeah. So thank you so much, ladies. It's been very informative. I hope you guys are hearing us. I hope you've benefited from all of these little things that are little but really big things towards your PR application that seems so simple. An officer would be able to call you and ask you the question or give you the opportunity to explain. But in our experience, you're not given an opportunity to explain. And with, again, like I said, with express entry being really difficult, ITAs being very difficult to come by, you want to ensure that you're reviewing and over reviewing those applications before you submit them, that you're not leaving any stone unturned, you're not leaving anything to chance, you are giving it your all in those applications. So thank you so much, Emmy, for your feedback there. But yeah, we want to know how the information we've shared. We're going into question sessions soon. Have you found this useful? Have you found this helpful? What are your feedback on this information? Have you received an ITA? Where are you at on your immigration journey? Let's just see where everyone is at on the chat and if this session has been informative for you. Yeah, because we're going to be going into the next section here as you're just waiting for your messages to key in. Just knowing how the session has been. The next thing is really, how can we help you? I think a couple of you have already been asking questions there about how can we help you? How can we have a session, a one-on-one session? With the journey to become permanent resident in Canada, it typically for us really starts with a consultation, because Canada has over 80 immigration programs. And I would even say almost 100, because there's always something and a new pathway to come to Canada and things like that. But with all of the different pathways that exist, it's not easy for someone to just outrightly, by knowing two things about you, tell you. This is where our consultations come up, where we sit with each client based on your background. We review it, because this is something we do all the time. We have a lot of expertise in-house, lots of great consultants, just like Yulia and Esther here. We have Sharon and Aisha as well on the team that consult on permanent residents to work you through exactly what the requirements and what your chances look like. The different programs, the different provincial programs you may be eligible for, pilot programs that you may be eligible for as well in country. All this information can be shared with you, so that you know exactly what you need to do and also what your chances are for you to get to permanent residence. In addition to the consultation, for applicants who need assistance with creating their express entry profile or need assistance with creating provincial profiles, if there are provinces that you meet eligibility for, we do offer that service as well, that we can help you and work with you through that. That service is very important, because one of the errors that Esther talked about was incorrectly claiming points, not selecting the right NOC code. When we are creating those profiles for you upfront, what we do is we basically do that deep diving, because before we submit that profile, we want to make sure it's accurate. We want to make sure that we're going to have enough documents to support all the points that you have claimed, so that by the time you receive an ITA, then we're not looking at you and say, oh, we think we need to decline that ITA, because really you don't have enough points and we can't claim all of those things there. So it is very, very important to have that service if you need it. We have clients that use our services in two different ways. With the express entry profile creation or provincial profile creation, or you can come to us as well even after you received an ITA. You received an ITA and you're like, this application is overwhelming, I don't want to do this myself. I'd love InfoPlace Canada to assist me with this application. Then we step in to either take on the whole application, fill it out for you, or you could fill it all out and get all your documents ready, and our team of consultants come in and complete a thorough review service on your behalf to help you ensure that you've checked off all the boxes and nothing is missed on your application and things like that. And we do have lots of success stories with our clients on both pathways that we've worked with on permanent residents and things like that. So there's a review service, or there's a full representation service. A review service is basically, I'm going to do my application. I can fill my form. I can arrange my documents and merge them and label and do all of that myself. But I would just like some professional second eyes to look at my case. And then A full representation is like, I've received my ITA. I don't have the time to fill my profile, fill the application, merge the document, label, put it clean in a way that an officer can understand. I need expertise to ensure I meet all the requirements and things like that. That is a full rep. With a full representation, we're also there with you in case of a PFL, in case of additional document requests and things like that. So a representation is not a one-time service. We're with you all through the whole aspect of your application process as well. And the fees vary. A review service would typically be anywhere from $850 US to 100 to 1,500. And a full rep service and all of these are based on family size and complexity of your case, could be anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000, depending on your family size and the complexity of your application. So if you're interested in working with us and things like that, we're going to leave our email address in the chat here. You can send an email to the team and we'll get you our intake form that you can complete, and we'll assess eligibility to see if you meet the requirement to get started with us, to work with us, and how we can help you on your PR journey as well. But if you've not even received an ITA, you're not sure you meet the requirements for any program, the first place to start will be to book a consultation with one of the consultants who can work with you through the process as well. All right, now we're going to go into answering your questions, because I know that we've seen a lot of questions coming in and we've been starring some of them. So we're going to take some questions here for the next 15 minutes. And at the 15 minutes mark, we'll be done for today. And if you have questions that we've not answered, definitely look into scheduling that one-on-one session. We're currently having a discount running across the company, across all services, where you can get 10% off consultations, review service, representation service. So if you need any of these services, the best time is now. And this promo right now is currently valid until December 31st. All right. So I'm going to go into the questions that we have started here. And we're just going to take turns answering those questions. So Crystal has a question here. We're going to stop my cam here and then go full screen. Okay. So Crystal has a question here. She says, I want to go on CEC, but my job is not 0 to 3. Esther, what would you tell Crystal?
So hi, Crystal. So the thing is, with Canadian Experience class, you need that 1 year of Canadian work experience. Canadian skilled work experience. So if your Canadian work experience is not skilled, you can actually look into provincial programs, because often provinces have, actually most provinces have programs that are geared towards not skilled work experience. So that's just something that you would want to look into depending on your province.
Yeah. And Crystal, I'll just add that, because sometimes people are like, I'm waiting to do Canadian Experience class, but do you have foreign work experience that you may have qualified for federal skilled worker? Have you explored that option and things like that? So there are different things that you can look at to really assess all the options that you have based on all the programs before, so that you're not just waiting for just the skilled worker, the NOC 0 to 3 to qualify. And when you say caregiver as well, there were some updates to NOC codes in 2022 that makes caregivers to qualify depending on your job duties. I mean, we'll have to look at it to qualify. So nursing aid, I don't, Amelia, you can say what that NOC code is. Still fall under the category now that are eligible under express entry. And guess what? You would be classified, if you fall under that particular NOC code, the health draws could capture you as well. So there are options. You might want to sit down with one of our consultants and just go through your stuff in detail, just to be sure that you are maximizing your options and you're not just waiting outside the pool to get to 1 year Canadian experience when there are other things that you could have used to get to PR as well. Okay? All right. Yulia, Kelvin has a question here. It said, how many years will it take for an international student to get to PR?
Oh, that's a great question. Everybody's story is different, and I'm being so truthful and honest with you. However, you can look at it from this perspective. Are you going to be using your Canadian work experience to get PR, or are you going to be using your work experience from back home? So, for example, if you're someone like who's got skilled work experience from back home and you're just completing your education, so the moment you graduate, you can put in your express entry based on your work experience from back home. If you have that skilled, continuous 1 year work experience, you can go ahead and do that. Or if you're someone who doesn't have that and you are just completing your education in Canada, you really want to get that post-grad open work permit, work for a Canadian employer for 1 year, and then go either the FSW route or the CEC route, also an option for you. So in terms of time, we've seen clients convert to PR. Let's just call it what it is. Convert to very quickly. Within a year of graduating. Or we've seen clients who take 2, 3, 4 years to be able to get there. So everybody's story and everybody's journey is truly unique. The best thing here is to really plan ahead. If you're an international student, don't just, plan ahead. If PR is truly your end goal, talk to us, find some professional help, or do your research. The fact that you're joining this webinar is already like amazing. You're well ahead of most of the other foreign students or international students. So my tip for you, plan ahead, look into your work experience and what can be done for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you, Yulia. And I would say how many years? Honestly, I've had clients who have not even completed their study in Canada and have successfully transitioned to become permanent residents. So while you're a student, you don't need to wait to graduate before you start having an express entry profile and all of that. Explore your options early. Things are always changing. And I always tell people, get in the pool as soon as you're eligible, because anything can happen with the draw, with the needs in Canada and things like that. And like Yulia said, start early. If you're thinking of coming to Canada, we have a dedicated type of consultation, which is PR and study. And during that consultation, what we do is actually explore your own unique details and options and how it aligns with your potential chance of becoming permanent resident. So we do it from the get-go. So there might be some provinces that are more beneficial to you for you to go to than the others based on your own unique profile. And the consultants will be able to point you in that direction so that you have a well-planned out strategy of how you're going to get to permanent residence even before you get to Canada and things like that. So that's something you might want to explore to really probably shorten the time that it will take you to get to permanent residence. Thank you so much, Yulia. Okay. Oh, Shala, congrats on your ITA. Well, I'm sure you learned a lot from our session today. We're so happy for you. Those ITAs don't come easy. I'm sure this was very informative for you. And I do hope and wish that, I hope that the things that we shared here today will be helpful for you with packaging your PR application. Congrats. All the best. We look forward to welcoming you to Canada. Yeah. Okay. Ibiso has a question. I am going for a 2-year diploma in hospitality management in May of 2024. What chances do I have for PR again after I graduate? Very, very similar to what we've talked about. Diploma program in Ontario, the 2 years is going to give you 3 years of postgraduate work permit. Now that's a big plus for you because within 3 years, it would give you enough time to gain some Canadian work experience and all of that. But first off, we want to look at what did you do before? What do your scores for express entry look like even before the Canadian education? And completing a 2-year diploma would add additional education points for you if you did not already maximize your points in education, and give you additional 15 points for having a Canadian diploma. And then by the time you start having Canadian work experience, there'll be additional points for you. Now, the chances really depends on the cutoff. It depends on what IRCC chooses to categorize, and it depends on your overall work experience, language ability, and things like that. Are you willing to learn French? You just shut up your chances. It really, really depends on a whole lot of things. And again, like I said before, that one-on-one conversation to strategize and lay out all the things that would be beneficial to you would be crucial as well. I have 7 years experience in construction, but currently on study permit, 1-year course on process quality engineering. Am I eligible for express entry? Over to you, Esther.
Okay. So hi, Kingsley. So the thing is, I can't really give you an exact answer. The thing is, I would need more information. But my first question would be, so the 7 years of experience in construction, what position, what knock code was that? Was that skilled? The other thing that I would like to mention is the 1-year course that you're completing here in Canada, you're going to get a 1-year work permit. So with that 1-year postgraduate work permit, you can actually gain 1 year of Canadian work experience. Now, for the federal skilled worker program, you actually need 67 points on the selection grid to be eligible for express entry. So we would be looking at your language results. We'll be looking at your work experience. We'll be looking at other factors like, do you have arranged employment? Did you complete your study in Canada? Do you have family members in Canada? So there's really so much that goes into it. So on the call, I can't tell you right now, are you eligible, because I would need to do an assessment. But I can tell you what I can tell you is, get your language results. Once you also, I would want to know, have you completed any education in your home country? So these are all just things to consider, but it would be a good idea for you to definitely see if you're eligible, if you have those 67 points. If you do, then fantastic. Create a profile. Create a profile, because you never know, you may get invited even before you complete your education. That could happen. So my advice to just everyone in this session, if you're eligible for FSW and you score 67 points on the selection factor grid, create a profile today.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you very much, Esther. That's amazing. All right. And how can I book a private session for a consult? I think we've shared the link there. Book, and there is a coupon code on the consultation page, and we can share it here in the chat as well. It's Santa23 ! You get 10% off when you're booking your session as well. Victor has a question. Is it okay for the length of a job offer between 18 to 24 months? What is the least duration, since the job contract is supposed to be at least a year after PR is received? Now, I wonder what program are you looking at? What is the job offer in? A little bit more clarity would really help us in answering this particular question. I have submitted my PR application, and I anticipate it may take long for the visa officer to reach a decision. I was planning to start school in May. Can I apply for a study permit while my PR application is in process? The simple answer is yes. We have done this. We have had clients who have done this, who had PR application in process already, and we applied for study permit for them. They got approved. They came to Canada. Months after they arrived in Canada, they became PR. The plus to this for you, Leah, is that the moment you become PR, you can actually write to your school and get a refund of part of your fees, because then you will be paying tuition fee like a Canadian, basically, Canadian and permanent resident. So you can absolutely, don't let anything stop you. You can go ahead to apply. Of course, you want to disclose that you've applied for PR. You want to take that all into consideration, because the officers, study permit, I know a lot of people, the reason people are scared about this is, oh, study permit is temporary residence, I have to prove I'll go home. How can I prove I'll go home when I'm already applying for PR? Yes, you can. You just have to convince the officer that should all else fail, should the PR fail, should the study permits come and that's all you have, when you're done, you will go back home. You're not one to live in Canada illegally and things like that. And that's usually where those concerns are. Ensure you have sufficient ties in your application, ties back to your home country still when you're doing that study permit, despite already having a PR application in process. So it's possible. We've seen it happen multiple times. So congrats on even being able to submit that PR application and on your admission as well. Okay. We have, Eno has a question actually. Said, do I have to have proof of funds at the moment, from the moment I get in the express entry pool? Yulia.
No, you do not. You have to have proof of funds at the time you're submitting your permanent residency application, okay? So that should simplify things a little bit. And we talked about proof of funds, source of funds. Oftentimes we have, parents gift the money or siblings gift the money to clients if you don't have them already sitting in the bank account. But yeah, very simple answer to this one. You need to have the funds at the time you submit the application and at the time you receive a decision. Okay, so that money has to be there throughout the entire time your application is being reviewed, because the officer wants to make sure that coming into Canada, you do have that $13,500.
Yeah.
So that's just a little tip for you there.
Perfect. Yeah. And one thing I would add is, even if you may not have it at the time when you're submitting your express entry profile, you should have a plan to how you're going to raise it the moment you receive an ITA. Because remember, when you receive an ITA, it's only 60 days that you're given to submit the application, and you don't want proof of funds to be the reason why you don't. So if there are assets that you're going to be liquidating, If family members have promised you to gift you funds, ensure they know how much you're going to need. If you have to liquidate some of your investment for it, ensure that you have a plan. Doesn't have to be there when you're submitting your express entry profile, but absolutely important to have a plan on how you're going to actually show those funds when the time comes around. Okay. While processing study permit, is it advisable to mention all work experience and skills? Will this help during the PR process to avoid complication or misrepresentation? Esther.
Okay, so for this question, yes, you want to mention all of your work. Well, really the work experience that IRCC is asking for. So a personal history there, but you definitely want to be truthful. And often what most individuals find is that they can't include all their work experience onto that study permit application form. So what you want to do is include a resume. So then you're truthful, you're including all of that. So later on, when you're applying for permanent residency, an immigration officer is not going to come back and ask why you did not disclose that work experience. So yes.
Always important. Perfect. Thank you. Tavani has a question here, Yulia. I have almost 2 years of experience overseas before I moved to Canada on study permit, not now on PGWP. Since it's not continuous, does it mean I cannot apply through the federal skilled worker stream? Do I have other options apart from CEC? To explain that continuous aspect, Tavani, is at least 1 year has to be continuous for you to qualify. After that 1 year, if you took a break and then came back and did 2 more years, you can add it all together. Now, if you were coming to apply for federal skill and you have 6 months here, and then you took a break, and then another 3 months here, and then you're trying to join it, that's when it doesn't qualify. Does that make sense? So if you have those 2 years of work experience, at least 1 year was continuous, and then you can join the second year and all of that, then you should be fine. But we can definitely look into this with you in more detail to see what it really looks like and the timelines with it to better advise. So CEC, of course, you're now on PGWP, so you're already gaining work experience in Canada. So that would be beneficial in terms of adding additional points towards your express entry as well once you eventually get that too. All right. Angela has a question here for you, Yulia. If I had a ban or a refusal to the US, are you still eligible to apply?
Okay, so you have to disclose your previous bans and refusals to the US. My tip for you is it a permanent ban or is it a 5-year ban? If it's a 5-year ban, have you made your probation? Has that passed? Is your record clear now with at least United States? Or was it permanent? So there's a lot that we go into it. We would ask you to write an explanation of what happened there, what kind of ban was there, but are you still eligible to apply to Canada? Send us, book a consultation with us. We'll be able to look into that. If you have the qualifications to meet any of these express entry or permanent residency pathways, you do stand a good chance of coming to Canada. However, that's not to say that Canada and US, they're like brother and sister. They're like brother and sister, and it will be a tough sell for you. I'm going to be honest with you. You really have to get to the bottom of what happened in the US. And then, like I said, if your record is clear, if your ban wasn't permanent, if it was a 5-year ban. I'm actually working with someone who has completed their 5-year ban, and we're going ahead with an application to Canada. You definitely have a good chance. So talk to us a little bit more about that, and we'll be able to provide specific answers to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Yulia. Mm-hmm. So Angela, if your ban was in Canada, you cannot apply until the ban is done. If your ban was to any other country in the world and you can explain yourself, you can apply to Canada. I have had a client that was approved who was deported from the US. So any negative immigration history you have in any other country would not impact your Canadian PR application as long as you disclose it and explain it properly. What I will tell you is it could delay your application, because when they see a ban, they see deportation, they see revocation of visas and things like that, IRCC is going to want to get to the roots of it. They going to contact those other foreign embassies to probably get some information, complete their background check. So as long if you have a ban refusal, all we have to, like we said in the presentation, is you just need to disclose it. You need to explain it, especially if it was a ban refusal. Sometimes we just have to mention that you had been refused. But if it was a ban, deportation, revocation, kicked out of the country, all that stuff you need to explain yourself so that it makes it easy for the officer to know. If the ban was in Canada, you have to wait until the ban period is done before you can apply. If it's in Canada, you cannot apply until the 5 years is done. And it's not just applicable to the primary applicant, it's also applicable to the spouse as well. If your spouse has a ban and you guys discover it in the application process, you both cannot apply because it's usually on the whole family if one person gets banned. So I hope that really clarifies what we've all been saying here around what the steps would be for the ban. Yeah. Okay. Leah, I think your question here is one that I answered. Can I apply for study permit while my PR is in process? We have that answer is a yes. So congrats to you. Joseph has a question here. If I book a consultation, will it be online or come to office? All our consultations are online with the consultant, video consultations online via Zoom, and that's what it would be. So we serve clients in over 40 countries. So wherever you are, you can certainly book a consultation with us and we'll be more than happy to work with you and assist you. Merit has a question here. Esther, you'll take this one. I'm currently on my PGWP and I currently have 2 jobs as a PSW in a nursing home. I don't think our question finished. Okay. She said, thank you for a very informative session. My questions are combined in 2. My question is, can I combine 2 part-time jobs? Esther, go ahead.
So if you can, okay, so it really depends. Are you under which program you're asking? You're currently on your postgraduate work permit and you're currently working 2 jobs. So if you're applying under the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you really need 1 year of continuous work experience for your eligibility. So this would be your primary occupation. This would be 1 NOC. So if we're talking about 2 different NOCs, we cannot combine that, but we can combine different NOCs if we're talking about your CRS score. So it really depends. If this is eligibility, with your eligibility, you need 1 year of continuous work experience in 1 NOC. For your CRS score, you can definitely combine multiple NOCs.
Yeah. Yeah. So Canadian Experience class, usually you can combine multiple NOCs to get the number of years of work experience. And it could be part-time, it could be 1 full-time plus part-time and things like that. But definitely get someone to look at the hours you're working. There's 15, 60 hours that you typically want to look at and things like that. So that's where it is. So with that work being in Canada, there is a chance that it would be eligible for you to use. And if you meet all the hours that are required to make it a full year of work experience, you can combine multiple NOCs for federal skilled worker. Okay. All right. Can you get postgraduate work permits while in the Express Entry pool? Absolutely. I just told you we have clients who have even applied for PR and still get study permits and all of that. Don't feel like I'm not going to get in the Express Entry pool because I won't be issued PGWP. No, get in the Express Entry pool. We have clients who, by the time they are graduating, some of our clients in some of the provinces that we work with as well, by the time they're going for their graduation, they've already received a nomination. And they're already on track to apply for PR. And sometimes they're not, your PGWP may not have even come back. So don't let that limit you. With Canadian immigration, there are rules. You just want to make sure you are within the rules and you meet the requirements for them as well. Okay, Edidion has a question here. She said, apart from Express Entry, what are other immigration routes available for pharmacists? Esther.
So apart from Express Entry, you can also look into provincial programs. So there are provincial programs available for pharmacists. So definitely look into various provincial programs. That is what I would advise. And also book a consultation so we can discuss this in more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Someone has a question here. Oh, Maria. I'm PR and I recently got married to someone who is banned for 5 years. Do I disclose this to IRCC? What is my fate? I think here, your question here, like you are PR and you've gotten married to someone who has a 5-year ban. It means that that person probably may not be able to come to Canada right away because of that ban. But there are other options that you can explore to get that person to come into Canada as well. It could be a temporary residence permit and things like that. I need a little bit more detail to know, are you married? Are you about to apply? Is the PR already in process? What stage are you at with the PR, or you're already PR in Canada? Maybe let's contact one of us here and let's have a chat about that and see how that would work out. But if it's already said and done, a TRP might be a good place to see. A temporary residence permit, not a residence visa, might be something you can explore to be able to help them come in and see you and things like that. I have this person said, please, I have a 1-year experience in care home, but on study permit, because I just want to know my options as well. Again, this is a question that really needs a deep dive, sit down. PR is one of the most complex pathway, like ways to come to Canada, ways to transition to. For applicants that are in Canada, we actually have a dedicated PR consultation. And in that PR consultation, we don't just talk about PR, we also go into talking about options for you to remain in Canada. Because a lot of times when people are contacting us as international students in Canada, with all the things that are happening right now, the challenge is, how can I get to Canada? How can I remain in Canada? So want you to think about that. If it's something that you're looking at your situation and you're like, I'm running out of work permit, I don't know what my options are. We work with you to explore options in your province and across Canada. Where else can you move to right now? Where should you be looking for a job to get you to PR? What are the options that are available? What should you be looking at? What should you be doing to maximize your chances of getting PR? That's what we do with you during those in Canada PR consults. So if you're on our website and looking for a consult to book and you're in Canada, you want to look at the in Canada PR consult, because that's the one that would give you the most information for your situation and really help you.
Also, I want to add on that for Oyinkan Sola is, work experience gained while on a study permit will not count. So yes. I don't know what work experience you're referencing to. Additionally, if your 1-year work experience is from your home country, in a care home, is it skilled? Let's look if it's skilled. That's the second one. So definitely what Florence said, there's a lot more to it. I just want you to understand how we break this down so that you see like the requirements, eligibility, and plans going forward for you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone who has joined. We've come to the end of this session. Thank you for joining. And a replay of this session is going to be shared with you. Share with anyone, friends, and anyone who would find this information helpful. And of course, if you're looking to get assistance from us, work with us to help you navigate PR, we're more than happy to work with you. We will also send an email with links to you as well with more details. Thank you so much once again. Thank you, Yulia. Thank you, Esther. That was fun. It was really nice doing this with you guys. Thank you, everyone. And I hope you enjoyed the session today. Have a wonderful rest of your day, morning, evening, night, wherever you are. Thank you for joining.